Hello, I'm Brett Knowles from PM Squared Consulting. I'd like to give you a quick overview of what we'll be touching on during our Agile Management with OKRs and CFRs roundtable. Here's the thing, that this roundtable is a virtual meeting and it's meant to be a conversation between you and me, an experienced thought leader in the area of OKRs, to explore some interesting aspects about OKRs. Our intention is to seed our conversation by providing you with a series of short introductions to interesting OKR topics that we've bumped into over our 2,000 or 3,000 clients and related best practices. And the idea of this video is I'll take you through a few possible topics we might want to talk on. Now, the actual web session will be focused on whatever topics you identify in your pre-session call or email that you'll have with Betterworks. So here are some ideas of things we might talk about. One is just about the need for agile strategy execution in organizations. Now, here's the story. The way that we deliver strategy is, if you think of the beginning of this year, right? You work with a leadership team to determine an overall strategy, what some organizations call the North Star. We then take that and align the organization to it. We cascade it down the organization or ladder it up from the bottom to get everyone aligned against those strategic objectives. And then, of course, we have to execute. We have to make sure that everyone out there is pulling in the same direction, and this becomes a standard OKR journey. Now, that's where we were in January. But guess what? COVID comes along and all of a sudden we're in survival mode. Well, what happens? Well, we better get together and rethink our strategy, realign to that new strategy, and then execute against it, whatever it is that we did when we moved in survival mode. But you can see this becomes a repeating theme, right? Once we've gone through survival, guess what? We're now moving into the new normal. How do we do that? Well, we again have to sort out our strategy in the new normal, align the organization to it, and execute. Many parts of the world are moving on to the next normal, and guess what? The process repeats. So although this cycle repeats, in a normal world, let's say once a quarter, you take a refresh of your strategy. In these times, we need the agility to reset strategy as required. And so that three-step process of strategy, align, execute becomes that muscle that we need to build in organizations. So that's one topic we might talk about. A second topic is about run the business versus change the business. Here's what that looks like. Imagine that we put a timeline across the bottom. And when we're setting our plan, one option is to what we call run the business, right? Keep the lights on, day-to-day activities, sales, accounting, payroll, those things. And what we do is we take last year's activity and we roll it forward, right? We call that forecasting. And that's basically for run the business type objectives. We have those moonshots or those, long-term BHAG type goals. And what we do for them isn't forecast, we backcast. We take where we want to be in the future and figure out what do we need to do now in order to make that future occur. And so as you set up your OKRs, most organizations have a mix between forecasting and backcasting. There's still things I need to do now in order to hit that long-term goal. And if I don't get them done now, I'm not going to achieve that longer-term goal. So again, another topic is, what are the appropriateness of forecasting versus backcasting in your business? What's the mix? Is it 50-50, 20-80, etc.? So topic number 2 we might talk about. A third one is what we call above the radar and below the radar. So let's imagine that we're building that OKR for the leadership team, L1 in your organization. And there's a bunch of stuff that they want to see. That's, their concern. Now, to make that happen, we have a series of departments. We'll say that's level 2, so a vice president in this example. And there's stuff the vice president does that's of concern to the leadership team. We're going to call that above the radar. There's also stuff they do that's below the radar. They need to do this stuff in order to get the above the radar work done. But this is below the radar. The leadership team doesn't need to worry about that activity. They just need to worry about the overall outcomes. But you as a manager, you need to be managing that trapezoid or you're not going to be getting the triangle. And that, cascades down the organization. You've got people at the vice president level that report up to you, L3s. There's stuff that they do that's above the radar you need to be cognizant of, and stuff that's below the radar. And it's a fractal, it's a repeating process. So the idea is, as you build your OKRs, so that the system does not get overly complex to any view, understand what's above the radar and below the radar. Again, a conversation around the roundtable could be, how do you orchestrate that? What's it look like in your organization? Many times there's things in level 4 that cascade all the way up to level 2 and up to level 1 and so forth. So that ecology. A third idea is the whole idea of making strategy a series of sprints, right? We're all familiar with, the agile sprint idea. Well, what if we, have the same steps, but we rename them for OKRs, right? You plan where we need to be setting up your OKRs. Let's say a department, we set the strategy, we cascade it inside the strategy, we build the OKRs, we put it into your system of record, we teach you how to run performance meetings, and then we launch, right? That is a cycle that we get done in 1 or 2 weeks. But it's a repeating structure, right? We're going to go and do this system for one area, let's say, and it doesn't have to be the top of the house. Let's say we start off with IT. And then the next area, maybe we go off and do a sprint for a second area. In this case, it's a region, the central region, and so forth. The third sprint might be for, let's say the corporate level. So those series of sprints are an effective way to build OKRs. It only takes a week or 2 in each area. They're up and running quickly, get the benefits, move on to the next area with that learning. So again, a conversation about how you set up your OKRs, what these sprints look like, and how they become effective. So that's a run through of some of the ideas we want to talk about during this web session. It's intended to be a roundtable. So come to us with your questions and your ideas, and we'll share with you our experiences and make it a conversation amongst all of us that show up. Thanks for your time.